Hello, healers and health seekers. It's me, Ichoda, healing with medical medium information for 4 years now. Healing from mast cell activation disorder, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, hypothyroid, migraines, PCOS, SIBO, and a whole host of other symptoms and conditions. If you want to know more about that, links are in the description box below. Today I'm going to go on a Gen X rant about the trouble with texting. You know, as Gen Xers, we use the technology, we understand how to use the technology, but we grew up without the technology. So it's not always our preferred everything. I grew up in a time where we had telephones. A telephone with a cord that stayed in your house, and you had to just have a super long cord if you wanted to walk around and talk on the phone. Eventually we had cordless phones, but you still had to stay in your house, and it was super impressive if you could actually go outside in your backyard. You'd be oh, look how far away I am from the house now. I'm 15 feet away. Oh, I'm still talking on the phone. That was impressive. We didn't have cell phones. We were not accessible 24/7. When we wanted to talk to somebody, we would call them on the phone and not ask them if it was okay to call them. You call them and then say, hey, are you busy? Can you talk? Or whatever. And then they could say yay or nay. But it just wasn't uncommon. And obviously that is not the way things are now. And now it's now it's become so absurd to call somebody. The etiquette is you text somebody and ask them if you can call them, because you don't want to surprise them by calling them. But it just wasn't that way before. And I've become accustomed to it, and that's not even a big deal for me. I just think it's interesting to notice, now just picking up the phone and calling somebody, it's it feels invasive somehow, but also that we are 24/7 accessible, where before, you would think, okay, well, I won't call somebody after 10 because they could be sleeping. There were just sort of respectful hours that you didn't call, and if you did call somebody that late, you had to know, if it would be okay. If you're a teenager, you can't usually call somebody that late because their parents might pick up the phone. Again, we didn't all have individual phones. It was a house phone, and people were just accustomed to speaking to each other. And I think a lot of it's it's convenient to text somebody and stuff like that, but it takes away the personalization of it. And I think it's what creates a lot of the anxiety in the generations that grew up with that technology, is because they are not used to and acclimated to speaking to each other face to face. It's not what they grew up doing. It's not something that they just learned from birth the way the rest of us did, those of us who are of older generations. So then it becomes difficult for them to imagine just going up to somebody and talking to them. But that's the way I grew up. That is how you communicated with people, is you had to talk to them. You had to. It wasn't until I was in my late teens that actually talking to somebody on a computer was even something people could do. And it was such a novel and bizarre thing at the time to type your conversations to somebody and message people. It was just still, again, it was the exception rather than the rule as far as the way people communicated. So with the advent of social media, and then the permeation of it, how it's permeated everything in our culture, I've noticed that a lot of times, instead of connecting people to each other, it drives a bigger wedge in between them, because everything can be distilled to a meme. You're a meme. If you have a certain response to something, you're a meme. They'll liken it to oh, you're this meme, oh, you're that meme, oh, you're a Karen, oh, you're a Chad, or you're this, or you're that. It's we're not memes. We're complicated beings. We're complex people with feelings and thoughts and levels, lots of levels to our actions and interactions. And when you have relationship with somebody, meaning And I don't mean like a romantic relationship. I mean, if you have a relationship period with somebody, which means you have interaction with them, you know them, you can kind of gauge where they're coming from, you have this energy exchange between you. You're face to face, or you talk to them on the phone. You can hear their voice inflections. You can hear... Is that a spider? What are you climbing on? How? I don't know if you guys can see that, but there is a spider climbing on a web that it seems to have spun onto the microphone of my camera. When? I just brought this camera out here. How is there a web? Anyway, I'm sorry. That was so cool. He's like, what are you... Is this web on me? Like, what is this attached to? You've spun a web onto my camera. This is gonna move. This is not a wise choice for you, buddy. I'm sorry. I know you guys can't see the spider, but he's like right there. Anyway. This is crazy. Okay. Where was I? When you speak to somebody in person, face to face or on the phone, you have this energy exchange. You can hear the inflection of their voice. You can hear their tone. You can hear the person and where they're coming from. When you have that, you have relationship. And when you have relationship, you're a lot less likely to have misunderstandings and miscommunications, because if somebody says something a certain way, you will think, oh, well, I know that person, like they're a good person. You know, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You're not suddenly, I don't know if you guys can see. No, he's not. The spider is like right here. It's crazy. Anyway. You're more likely to give them the benefit of the doubt rather than just being offended at something they say or whatever. Like that's another thing is that Gen Xers grew up with, and the generations before us, is we grew up with being able to have an exchange of ideas with somebody that you disagree with and still walking away friends. And like not cutting each other out of your life because, you know, it would just be like, oh, that's... So what? You have a disagreement, but you still like them as a person. It's not... It seems like that with the advent of social media and memes and all that stuff, it's like everything is reduced to like, you're either with us or you're against us. So it's like, it's very divisive. It like cuts us apart from each other. Like, oh, if you don't do everything the way I think you should, you know, and agree with me 100%. It's like, who are you going to find in this world? You're going to keep making your world smaller and smaller and smaller if that's the case. If you need everybody to agree with everything you say, and it's going to be very, honestly, uninteresting, because who are you going to have to exchange ideas with where you can actually see a different perspective? We need other perspectives. Like, I feel like it's really important. Like, the way we grow and learn and broaden our horizons is to get different perspectives. But I feel like it just helps us grow and broaden our horizons and be better people if we can hear perspectives that are different from our own. And it seems like social media has just taken that away. And because everybody's it's like if you say something that somebody disagrees with or doesn't like, they'll reduce you to a meme. Oh, you're a Karen. Oh, you're a Chad. Oh, you're mansplaining. There's so many ways that we other and divide ourselves. Like there's the genders, there's sexual orientation, there's skin color, there's political affiliation. I don't know. I can't even think of more, but I know there's so many more because I just see it all the time, because it's just like, oh, here's another way to divide. You're this, you're that. And none of these things take into account that there's a whole person behind that sentence. There's like a whole person behind that screen that you're not thinking of when you turn them into a meme, or you turn them into a label. Instead of making social media or technology making us feel more connected, it's like it's making us feel less connected and less able to understand each other or allow for any perspective other than our own. And I just feel like that is heartbreaking, because my son and people his age are going to grow up. My son's a teenager, so he and people his age, and even just a little bit older than him, are growing up not ever knowing what it's like to just be connected in that other way, to just talk to people face to face, to just go borrow a cup of sugar from your neighbor. Not that we eat sugar, but because it's like now it's like we're afraid to talk to our neighbors, and we're afraid to just connect with each other. It's just becoming more and more rare to just talk to people and smile at them and connect with them and speak to them and answer your phone or make a phone call. Make a phone call. And the reason I'm all on this topic right now is because it's interesting, because technology becomes a double-edged sword, because with chronic illness you lose more and more people from your life a lot of times, and technology becomes the way that you again feel like you are connected to anything and you connect to the world. So I want to make it clear that I'm not completely dogging technology. I'm not a Luddite. I'm using technology to talk to you and make this video. It's just that it changes the way our brains work, and it changes the way we interact with each other. And I have found, even in my own experience, when I use it too much and I'm too dependent on it, and not having conversations with people on a regular basis. Now, I'm an external processor. I freaking love to talk to people. I have conversations with people that are hours long. And sometimes that's why it's better for me not to talk on the phone with people, because I tend to also talk to people who have that same problem, and we will just talk for too long. Like, nobody knows how to get off the phone. Nobody knows how to end the conversation. And that's, anyway, but when I was a teenager and in my 20s, if I'd be on the phone, like a lot of times, like if I'm at home, I'm on the phone, like I was on the phone all day, and like off and on with friends. Like we'd call each other back and forth, like throughout the day, touching base, talking to each other and stuff like that. And I think when we did talk to each other more, I think we were more forgiving of each other, and we didn't get so offended by each other, because it's like we knew the person, and it's like, oh, they might have said something stupid, but you know their heart, and you know they're coming from a good place generally, and just because they said one stupid thing doesn't make them like a bad person. And I think that's the problem now, is we just think, oh, like it's like we determine somebody's character on like one sentence or something that they say. It's like we've lost relationship with each other. So where I've seen this happen in my life, so with chronic illness, people couldn't stick around for whatever reason. And that happens to so many people who have chronic illness. As they lose friends, people just exit out of their lives. And along my healing journey, so there were people that I like super bonded with in my chronic illness, and we would talk on the phone and stuff like that, but none of us could see each other a lot because we were all chronically ill, and that's really tough. But I noticed that, I should just say it this way, when I have lost friends along this journey, whether from sickness or in healing, I notice that every time it happens, it's when we're either like texting or messaging or something like that, and it's there's some kind of misunderstanding where it's like, if we were having that same conversation and talking, it wouldn't have happened. And I've noticed it happen, not just with myself, but with other people, but I notice it directly in my life. I'm like, why is it always in a text? It's always something texting. And I don't mean like people saying in a text, hey, I don't want to be friends anymore. I mean, literally, there's some conversation and then there's some misunderstanding in the text conversation. And it's always a conversation that's nuanced. So it's like texting is not an appropriate place to have a nuanced conversation. And I cannot tell you how many times I have said this to people. I have said it over and over and over and over again. And at this point in my life right now, I am to the point where I just don't even like texting. Like, it's okay for shorter communications that are kind of surfacey. That's fine. Or solidifying details, or like, you know, hey, can you pick up some oranges or whatever, like from the store. Those are the kind of things you text. But when you're trying to have like a nuanced conversation about something that's like emotional or on your heart, or something that means something to you, please never text me. Don't message me, don't text me. Because, and not just me, I'm just saying, like, don't do this. Don't try to have a real conversation that's deep and meaningful and important to you in a text, because you cannot communicate tone or intent or your inflection or anything like that, like your body language. There's nothing there. And even on the phone, like, yeah, there's not body language, but you can hear tone and you can hear inflection and you can hear. It's easier to explain things back and forth, but man, I cannot tell you how many freaking miscommunications I have had in texting because from either side, either I misunderstood or somebody else misunderstood, because you're not. A friend of mine put it to me this way: when you're reading something on the screen, you're reading it in your own voice. You're not hearing the other person or thinking of where they're coming from or anything like that. Like, you don't have that perspective. You're hearing it in your own voice. And you miss out on really trying to understand where somebody's coming from. And I'm to the point where I'm like so fed up with it, where I'm just like, I have freaking had enough with texting. And I have told people, I've had situations even recently where I have told people repeatedly, please, I cannot do nuanced conversations in text. Like, I can't do it. It's too much, and nobody gets anybody's meetings, and there's too many opportunities for misunderstandings and miscommunication, and repeatedly. It's like people don't hear that, they don't see that, whatever, like they have their own thing and whatever, and for whatever reason, they'll do it anyway and it'll happen anyway. And I'm just so frustrated with it, because I'm like, why? First of all, why? Because it's so much faster to speak words than to freaking type them on a phone. It takes me freaking forever to type anything on my phone, and my phone is horrible. It auto-corrects everything to the wrong stuff, and I have tried disabling it, and it won't disable. It just does it anyway, no matter what settings I tweak or what I change, and I've looked it up on the internet how to do it, and it won't, and it just won't, and it keeps doing it anyway. It takes me so long, because then I have to go back and recorrect every word, and it just takes freaking 2 to 3 times as long to just, as it would to just regularly text. And then I'm like, why don't I could just say this to you? Like, why can't we just talk to each other real quick? I am actually capable of having a shorter conversation. It just takes some pre-established, because I said earlier, I have long conversations for hours. It doesn't have to be hours. I can have shorter conversations. Like, we just have to both say, this is going to be quick. It can happen. So I don't understand. It just drives me nuts that it's like, oh no, let's have this really long, nuanced conversation in a text rather than just pick up the phone, where we could so much more easily avoid misunderstandings. I'm not saying misunderstandings never happen when you're talking to someone. They do, of course. But it's so much easier for them to happen in a text, because you're not getting all of the extra things that come from verbal communication or face-to-face communication. And it drives me nuts because I have lost people from my life over misunderstandings that happened in text. I had one situation where, this was a while ago, a long time ago, but this was an old friend from high school, and we had reconnected, and we had been talking like while, when I was chronically ill. She also suffered from some pretty severe chronic illness and had a lot of stuff going on. She had just gotten texting on her phone, and there was some conversation, like she was trying to text me like the kind of stuff we usually would just have really long conversations on the phone about, like philosophical kind of stuff, like existential kind of stuff. Like she's trying to text me, and I was like, dude, this is not a text conversation. I'm like, you gotta call me. And then she I don't know what happened. Like she flipped out, but all of this was intent. Like I kept saying let's just talk. This is not a text conversation. It's too nuanced. And I just don't know what happened. Like something, and we ended up not talking after that but it was all honestly, most of what happened from what I could see was her having an argument with herself in this text, because most of it went on when I wasn't even there. Like she was having some kind of back and forth between herself, because I was at a friend's house, and I told her, I'm like, I'm gonna be gone for the day, so I won't be answering my phone. I'll be at my friend's, so I'm not gonna be looking at my phone. And I didn't. And when I got back, there were 18 text messages. And when I did text her back, I was like, dude, I told you I was gone. What is this? And it was basically her arguing with herself, and I think she thought she was arguing with me, but there were no responses coming from me. It was all her, and I was just like, what happened here? And I was like, this is not a text conversation. We should talk. And she was just like, you always do. She basically kept verbally assaulting me, because she just kept barraging me with really angry texts. And finally I was like, we can't, I'm sorry. When you want to talk to me, you can call me, but I'm like, I can't do this with you. Because she was in a whole world of her own with that situation. And it sucked, though. The whole thing sucked, because it's that's not the only time that's happened. I mean, it doesn't usually happen quite like that. That's the most drastic example of it, but that's what happens. People get into their own thing, they're spiraling out on their own thing, and they're not even connecting with the person. They're in some space, And that's what super frustrates me about texting, because it's just how many times does that have to keep happening? And I don't know how many other ways can I say to somebody please, please, please don't ever try to have a nuanced conversation with me through text. It just doesn't work. In my experience, it never works. First of all, it takes way too long to type. I mean, if you gotta text somebody and your text is longer than I can scroll on my, your text is so long that I have to scroll up to read the whole text, call me. That's too much to text at me. Ever. At any person, not just me. I feel that's too much to text. That's nuanced. Whatever that is, with that many words, with that much to say it verbally. Because whatever point you think you're making, you're not. It's not coming across. It's just not coming across. And it's to me, it's kind of a waste of time, because it's it takes so long to type all that, where you could just say it in probably a minute, I don't get it. Whew. Anyway, I had to talk about this. Keeps happening, and I'm just so frustrated with it. And it doesn't help that right now 6 planets or however many planets are in retrograde. I don't even know how many. Mercury's one of them. That's all I know. It's the worst one. So, in my opinion. That causes communication issues in and of itself. So I feel like texting during a Mercury retrograde is just a recipe for disaster. Just don't do it unless you're, I mean, if your text can be things like pick up some oranges or look at this picture of my garden, great. But don't, if your text has to be a paragraph, just call somebody. Let the thing you text be, hey, do you have time for me to call you right now? Or when can we talk? You know, when can we make a phone call to each other? It's not worth it. And it makes me so sad because, I mean, literally every time this has happened with me, I can so see that everything that occurred was just a total misunderstanding and miscommunication. And like I said, that one friend, like that's a perfect example of it. And I know, you know, she had a lot of stuff going on and a ton of brain fog and all this stuff. And I'm like, all the more reason to not try to interpret things in that way, like not to be texting and stuff like that. But I'm just, there was so much stuff there, but it breaks my heart because I'm like, I know that was just a total miscommunication. And if we had been talking on the phone, none of that would have happened. Because she spent like the whole day just arguing with herself. And by the time I actually did respond, she was so worked up into a frenzy that like, and I didn't even know, I wasn't even here. What is this? But that's texting, man. That's texting. It's like, it adds this whole level of opportunity for misunderstanding, miscommunication, and having things happen that you can't undo and that you're gonna regret. And I feel like technology can be used for good, but it can also be really destructive sometimes. And I wanted to talk about it. It's been weighing on me lately. You know what? It's interesting because I don't feel like this happens in emails, but I feel like emails are a lot more thought out, where you're not just firing something off out of some triggered place, right? Like if you're writing somebody an email, like you're sitting down and you're thinking about what you're going to say and stuff like that. Of course, nobody really writes emails anymore, but it's kind of different. So it's kind of different. It's like, yeah, you're still at a keyboard and a screen and stuff like that. And yeah, you can make angry emails, but there's more opportunity to think about them. Whereas texting is just, it's like reactive. And even being on our devices at all, it does give you an adrenaline hit and amps up your adrenaline. So if somebody says something and you perceive it a certain way, you're gonna, I mean, it's not good. And I've been on both sides of that. So I don't want to be like, oh, everybody else misunderstands. No, me too, totally. Like either side, like it's miscommunications both ways. I've totally had it go both ways. So I'm not by any means saying like this is everybody else's fault. Only other people misunderstand in text, not me. No, I totally do. That's why I need to talk to people. I just have an awareness of it. Like I know I need to talk to people so that I know where they're coming from and I understand, because otherwise I'm reading it through whatever I'm going through. Like if I'm triggered and I'm reading something, I'm going to read it so differently to if I'm in a good space and I'm reading the exact same thing. Like I will miss words. I've noticed this. I've had this happen. You go back and read later and go, oh wow, that's not what that said at all. Whoa. Like I was or if I'm brain fogged. You could be brain fogged, you could be triggered, whatever, but it's just so much easier to perceive what somebody means and where they're coming from when you're just hearing them verbally rather than reading something, because of so many opportunities for anyway, that's my rant. I would love to hear from you what your experience is with that, and what do you think about it? Do you feel like you don't have any issues with communication and texting and it's been just fine for you, or do you feel like you've had kind of a similar experience? And I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, bearing with me through my little rant here about texting. and technology and memes and social media and all that stuff. I hope it was in some way useful to somebody. Yeah. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up below. You can subscribe to my channel by hitting the subscribe button over there. You can ding the bell next to it if you want to be notified when I post a new video. I love you, my healers and health seekers. Do everything to take care of your adrenals and keep your body filled with glucose. I got my blended papaya right here to support my adrenals and to keep my brain full of glucose so that I can do my little rant and be okay. Not work myself up too much. Just remember, I love you. Stay curious. I wish you so many blessings on your continued healing journey. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.